President Joe Biden has made an announcement following the Supreme Court's decision to stop his student debt relief plan that was on the verge of reducing debt for 43 million borrowers and wiping out the full remaining balance for almost 20 million borrowers. And it's a plan that he should have had from the start. Now, I'm going to get to what he announced, what he discussed, the timeline that he has set out, which is raising some eyebrows. But I'm also going to get to some clips and just show you, of course, the insane level of hypocrisy, once again, from conservatives on this debt forgiveness. Because, of course, very recently, they received millions of dollars in debt forgiveness. But now when working class folks need it, it's apparently not okay. So let me first get to just the basic details here, and then I'm going to get to Biden and some other another clip as well. But from Axios here, tens of millions of borrowers will resume monthly student loan payments after the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 on Friday that President Biden's loan forgiveness plan is unconstitutional. Borrowers who qualified for the relief plan would have been forgiven for loans up to $10,000 for individual borrowers who make under $125,000 per year or $20,000 for Pell Grant recipients. Now, there's not even the legal basis for this case. Like, forget about, I'm not even going to get into, I could go into what each justice says and get to all that boring trash, but ultimately, there was no legal basis for this case to even happen. So as Ali Mistal writes here, and actually I'll get to Kagan, so I'll get to one reaction from a justice in a second here. But as Ali Mistal, who is an expert in this field, I always go to him first when it comes to any Supreme Court ruling. As he writes here, the states suing the Biden administration shouldn't have been granted the right to sue at all because the states suffer no harm from the student debt relief program. So this case only came up because these groups were claiming, oh, we're being harmed by this student debt relief, when they weren't. Yet the Supreme Court took the case up anyways. So as Justice Kagan wrote in her dissent, she criticized the court's overreach and noted she would have decided the states didn't have the right to sue. The plaintiffs in this case are 6 states that have no personal stake in the Secretary loan forgiveness plan. They are classic ideological plaintiffs. They think the plan a very bad idea, but they are no worse off because the Secretary differs. There was no legal basis for this plan. The Supreme Court, let's be clear once again, is completely illegitimate. And I'm going to get to another example of that later on in this video. But I want to show you here what AOC wrote, and this leads into what Biden announced. So after the ruling, she writes here, it is very important to note this SCOTUS ruling does not remove Biden's ability to pursue student loan forgiveness. The Biden administration can use the HEA, the Higher Education Act. Our position from the start to continue loan forgiveness before payments resume. They should do so ASAP. This is what Bernie Sanders and a handful of other progressives like AOC have been arguing since the beginning. This is, if they had used this, there would not be any ability to counteract that. It would have been done. We would have been over this. This would have happened, a year ago. But no, the Biden administration had to use a different course to try and cancel student debt, utilizing the pandemic as the emergency response. And that's the basis for them canceling. And that's why the court ruled against it, claiming it wasn't a good basis to cancel student debt. Anyways, I want to get to Biden's reaction here and the announcement that he makes.
I believe the court's decision to strike down my student debt relief program was a mistake, was wrong. I'm not going to stop fighting to deliver borrowers what they need, particularly those at the bottom end of the economic scale. So we need to find a new way, and we're moving as fast as we can. First, I'm announcing today a new path consistent with today's ruling to provide student debt relief to as many borrowers as possible, as quickly as possible. We will ground this new approach in a different law than my original plan, the so-called Higher Education Act. That will allow Secretary Cardona, who's with me today, to compromise, waive, or release loans under certain circumstances. This new path is legally sound. It's going to take longer, but in my view, it's the best path that remains to providing for as many borrowers as possible with debt relief.
All right. Before I even get to the announcement, which, yes, he's using, or I guess he's claiming that they're going to pursue, like, he could do this right now. And he's claimed it's going to be a long process using the Higher Education Act. Get the hell. Anyways, before I even get to all that, the man's asleep. Like, I watched this entire announcement, and he is not ready for a campaign. So I don't know what the hell, like, Biden has to ride completely on the fact that Republicans are hated. He has to pray and hope that's going to be enough to win an election, because he does not have it in him for another 4 years. It's very clear. But that's, I guess, a different conversation. But gee, go watch that if you want. If you don't believe me, if you question what I'm saying here, go watch him. Watch anything he's doing right now. The guy he needs to retire. Anyways, on this point of his announcement, so the Biden administration will move forward with a new plan grounded in the Higher Education Act that will compromise, waive, or release loans under certain circumstances. So they're pursuing this. When Biden says it's going to take a long time, it's going to take a long time. I don't know why. They were already cleared to do this. I believe 2 years ago that they purposely did I think it was like a research. Again, I should have brought this up, but you can look this up yourself. I will link to it below because I know this happened. They investigated whether or not they had the authority to cancel student debt. The report came back and they didn't publicly announce anything because it showed that they did. And they didn't want to have to act because of what the report showed them. So they kept that secret forever. This entire time, they've had the ability to do this through the Higher Education Act. And instead, they did this weird workaround for no reason at all. Oh, well, here's the reason. Sam Sachs writes here, the Biden admin opted not to use the authority it had under the Higher Education Act to cancel student loan debt and instead relied on a weaker emergency authority under the HEROES Act, specifically because it didn't want to set a precedent for future admins to easily cancel student debt. This is the only logical conclusion here, is they didn't want to set this kind of precedent. Because what other reason is there when you have the authority to do it? Let me get to a question that Biden was asked here at the end, and this is the first time he showed some energy.
Mr. President, why did you give millions of borrowers false hope? You've doubted your own authority here in the past.
I didn't give any false hope. The question was whether or not I would do even more than was requested. What I did, I thought was appropriate and was able to be done and would get done. I didn't give borrowers false hope, but the Republicans snatched away the hope that they were given, and it's real hope. Thank you.
Biden is right here that Republicans did snatch us away. At the same time, he's had the ability through the Higher Education Act to do this. And he decided to use a different method that led to where we are now. Now, I want to get to the Republicans on this because, of course, this is just their hypocrisy is the same as it ever was. So the first example here, Daily Caller, a conservative outlet, they're, of course, very happy about this, but they have a report here. Supreme Court has blocked Biden's student loan giveaway. Jordan Ewell has a fantastic thread breaking down all of these, whether it's groups, Republicans that were given PPP loans, had them forgiven, which, of course, includes the Daily Caller here. So they were around $1 million in loans forgiven. $1 million while we're talking about 10 grand, 20 grand for students. $1 million in loans forgiven. And then he goes on and on and on. All these Republicans celebrating the result. Meanwhile, they all got their loans forgiven. I'm going to get to a clip referencing this. So this is Education Secretary Miguel Cardona, and he brings up a few examples of people who are celebrating the result here, yet they had massive loans forgiven.
Today, the court substituted itself for Congress. It's outrageous to me that Republicans in Congress and state offices fought so hard against a program that would have helped millions of their own constituents. They had no problem handing trillion-dollar tax cuts to big corporations and the super wealthy. And many had no problems accepting millions of dollars in forgiven pandemic loans. Like Senator Mark Wayne Mullen from Oklahoma had more than $1.4 million in pandemic loans forgiven. He represents 489,000 eligible borrowers that were turned down today. Representative Brett Guthrie from Kentucky had more than $4.4 million forgiven. He represents more than 90,000 eligible borrowers who were turned down today. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia had more than $180,000 forgiven. She represents more than 91,800 eligible borrowers who were turned down today.
It is just endless with these people. The most hypocritical people in the world. And of course, they don't care. They're just going to argue for their side. They're going to argue for tax cuts for the rich. They're going to argue for loans forgiven for the rich. But when it comes to working class individuals who are students who need the help, no, they can't get any. It's gross. And if you want more examples, as I said, Jordan Ewell has a great thread here. I will link to it below. Though now Twitter has changed its rules where you have to actually be a member of Twitter, or you need an account to be able to view this stuff now. Unfortunately, Twitter is, just trash at this point. But again, different discussion. Let me get to one last thing here I want to discuss. This is on the how illegitimate the court is. So just another example of this. Of course, there are countless examples when it comes to Clarence Thomas. I covered that. There is I think I covered the new Alito one. I don't know. It's just been endless with these people. Here's another example of Justice Alito and just how he should not have been a vote in this case at all. So Alito accepted tens of thousands of dollars in lavish vacation gifts from a billionaire who lobbied to cancel the student loan forgiveness program. After the gifts, Alito voted to overturn Biden's program. This SCOTUS corruption undercuts its own legitimacy by putting its rulings up for sale. How, in any other scenario, in any other world, any other country, you would clearly have to recuse yourself if this was allowed at all. Like if you were, you shouldn't be on the court, but if you're on the court, you definitely should not be deciding on this case of student loan forgiveness when you received tens of thousands of dollars from somebody who was trying to cancel student loan forgiveness. This is why it's hard to even report on any of Supreme Court garbage, because that's what it is. It's all just trash. And just, another example, I mean, this is another case, but it's worth noting. Supreme Court's Alito ruled against EPA as wife leased land to oil and gas firm. It's never ending with these people. So, look, I don't want to give anybody false hope here. I hope Biden, already that sentence doesn't feel too good. I hope Biden does something here. I actually hope he pursues this. The idea that this is going to take a while, no one really understands why it should take a while. They've canceled debt in other scenarios before. There's no reason why they can't cancel the debt they promised to cancel under the Higher Education Act. So at this point, it's just a waiting game.